Hello, everyone. I am Samar Ahmed. I am the founder of the Regional Famer Institute for the Middle East and North Africa. And currently, I am the Vice Dean for Community Affairs at Delta University for Science and Technology in Egypt. I am happy to be with you today to speak about a very important topic, which is program evaluation and how we design this. I'm speaking about this topic as a part of educational management in medical education. So let's take it away, and I hope this will be of use to all of you out there watching this video. So what do we do regarding program evaluation, and why are we speaking about this topic? Well, you see, program evaluation, it's an essential part of education, and it is the responsibility of everyone working in the medical education program. What is program evaluation? Well, simply evaluation of the program. It is how you use the information to make decisions about the value or the worth of the educational program. It also signifies the use of this information, these parts of information, to drive this program forward, to decide on changes, to decide on how we progress, all these things. This is what program evaluation is about. So this is what the ACGME says about program evaluation. It says it is the systematic collection and analysis of information related to the design, implementation, and outcomes of the program for the purpose of monitoring and improving quality and effectiveness of the program. This is what the ACGME says. Great. So let's understand the program as well. And this is what Durning and Hammer said in 2010. They said that these are the actions, program evaluation are the actions needed to be taken in order to address the findings of the evaluation process. So the actions that we take are also an integral part in identifying what program evaluation is about. So now what's a program? And when I'm speaking about a program today in this specific setting, I am not speaking about the program in the sense that you all know about. A program here is anything, any systematic thing that happens with an outcome. It may be as small as an individual class, a course, or a clerkship, maybe a rotation, maybe the whole program in the sense that you know. Well, it may be situated in the medical school or in the postgraduate training, whatever it is, or maybe even in faculty development or continuous professional development. We refer to this as program. As long as it has an outcome, we will call it today a program. So let's agree on a few points before we start. Let's agree that educational programs, they're fundamentally about change. So program evaluation should be designed to determine whether or not this change happened. Is that simple? And it's that easy. But take care, change can be intended or unintended. When we do program evaluation, we need to test for both types of change, the intended change and the unintended change. There are multiple theories that affect how we perform or how we approach program evaluation. The most important theory that affects the way we think about program evaluation is the reductionist theory or the reductionism theory. And we will speak about this in a very short while, but take care, put it in mind that this theory, it really mandates and affects how we think about the studies that we do in the context of program evaluation. But take care, programs are complex. They have multiple interactions between participants and between the the individuals, the subsets, and the context as well. And this is why there are other theories that we should be targeting to think about when we are speaking about program evaluation. And of these theories is the complexity theory. And we will also be speaking about this in a very short while. So the association between the program elements and the outcome, it might not be as linear as you think. So if I introduce, for example, team-based learning, this does not necessarily need to have a direct impact on the student grades, for example. It simply doesn't work this way. You cannot predict the outcome of an educational program. You can only hope for minimum achievement. And this is why we all work within the context of evaluating all our interactions in the program and hoping to be able to achieve good student learning. The AME, the Association of Medical Education in Europe, this is what they recommend. They recommend for you to choose a program evaluation model that allows you to examine the change in your program, and also a model that embraces the complexity of the educational process. This is what the AME thinks. So what do I think? I think I would like to correct this sentence, and instead of choosing a program evaluation model, I would like to choose a program evaluation methodology, because this is what we want to do. We want to take this as simple as possible. And I will tell you at the end how I would like to approach program evaluation in general. For now, let's discuss change. So you see, the program, any program in the world, it focuses on change. And the change is perhaps, it's the most evident for learners, but they are not the only thing that changes in the program. Everyone and everything in the program changes. And this is why program evaluation models or methodologies or approaches, they need to take into account all these subsets and how they have changed within the concept of learning. The educational program is also not very static. It's a very dynamic being. We call it a living being or a living program. It's a living to the point that nothing is static at all in any educational program. And this is why program evaluation models, approaches, or methodologies, they also need to be an integral part of this change and dynamic process. They have to be adaptable and they have to change with the changes that the program encompasses or lives. So why do we do program evaluation? Well, we do program evaluation to support accountability for everything in the program. The program is intended to perform something. We need to be accountable to this something or the change that is happening. So what does Goldie in 2006 say? What did Goldie say in 2006? They say that the program evaluation process, to be strong, it has to support accountability while allowing educators to gain useful knowledge about their program and to sustain the ongoing program development. It kind of encompasses everything we want to say and why we actually do program evaluation. I love this sentence. Now let's speak about the theories. We said we will talk about the theories, remember? And the first theory is what we call the reductionism theory. What does this theory say? Well, the reductionism view, it believes, or it sees the concept that the individual subsets of the program, when they change, they will change the outcome. Not just that, they will change the outcome in a quantifiable manner. So there should be a direct relationship between very minor changes that I make in the program with the program outcome. This reductionism theory is what we do when we perform research and we want to study the cause-effect approach of whatever we do. It kind of works. It brings out results, actually, but there is a problem with these results. These results do not take into account the context of learning. They do not take into account the interrelationships between the different aspects of the program or the different subsets of the program. And this is why the system theory came along. And the system theory actually thinks and cites that the whole of the program is not the sum of its individual subsets and parts. This is because you see the system as a whole, it has other elements that we do not specifically see. One of these elements is the context where all these systems are functioning. So if you consider the system as a living being, you will see that nothing in the system alone can perform in silo. And this is why in the system theory, the context is very important and it is taken into account. Systems are either closed system or open system. Closed systems are systems where nothing comes from outside, nothing is lost. So you can actually understand the whole subsets of the system and you can quantify them. But there are other systems that we call open systems. And open systems take into account as well environmental factors that exist outside the system. And these are the two different types of systems that there are. And both of them, they are taken into account when we speak about the system theory. But take care. Now we have thought about the subsets of the program, the subsets of the system in relationship to the context. But take care. These systems, they need to be in equilibrium. They need to be always stationary and static. And this is why closed systems could be systems that we call dying systems. The system, we call them dying system because they are stationary and in equilibrium. In contrast, open systems, they are in steady state. They are, but there are interrelationships and balance that is always in active state. Take care, these relationships that exist, they do not just exist between these subsets, specific subsets, and the context. No, they exist between these subsets and each other. And this is why we had to come up with another theory called the complexity theory, which takes into account all these things. The relationship between subsets and each other, relationships between subsets and the outcome, the relationships between subsets and the context, and also taking into account systems that are not just closed and in equilibrium, but systems that are exposed to all other aspects of forces that exist from outside the system. And this is, we called them open systems before. So this is why Menon spoke about complexity. And Menon is the father of complexity, actually, and Stuart Menon. And the complexity theory is what drives program evaluation when it comes to this specific theory. The beauty of this theory is that when we speak complexity and when we think complexity, it is very hard to anticipate the change, but you're open to all kinds of change that exist in the system. So you do not really know the outcome of your study, but you are really experimenting and looking for it. And this is why innovation comes out of complexity, and lots of other things that we have not expected come out of complexity. So you see, program evaluation models, they abide to one of these theories that we spoke about a minute ago. Let's take a look at these models. Quasi-experimental model, it is the model where educators believe that if I do a very small change, I can quantify its impact at the end, and I compare it to what we have been doing before and see the increment in the results. What theory does this abide to? I think reductionism theory. It's very reductionist. And then Kirkpatrick came along, and Kirkpatrick identified there are levels of this change that happens. The levels of this change are in 4 levels, according to Kirkpatrick. The first level is the reaction of the learners. Second is the learning that actually happens. Third is the transfer of this learning. And the fourth is the results, or the actual impact of the learning that has happened. And what Kirkpatrick model for evaluation suggests is that we have to investigate all these 4 levels in order to be able to understand the true impact or the true outcome of the program. This is what Kirkpatrick thinks. But guess what? The problem with Kirkpatrick is that they did not take into account the individual variability of the learners, the the education and the understanding that they came into the program with, the other program elements that exist, the context, the effectiveness of the resources, all that other stuff. So it overlooks a lot of the system that education happens in. And this is why Kirkpatrick is not the best model for, in my point of view, to perform program evaluation. But the logical model is beautiful because you see, the logical model, it takes a look at education as a circular process where we start by the intervention that happens, that affects the learners. And then we collect data, and this data comes out with information. This information, it feeds back into the intervention. And this is why the logical model seems very logical. So you see, it says that there is an input. This is what I put into the education process, be it the context, be it the infrastructure, be it the teacher, the program itself, I mean, the educational program itself, whatever, the content, these are called inputs. And then there are activities, and this is the teaching methods and the assessment methods and all that stuff. And there are outputs, and this is the, for example, the student results or the success rates. This is called outputs. And then there are outcomes, and this is what changes in the students or in the system or in the teachers according to the education that happened. So this is the logical model. And these are the logical components. And what we want to say is that the program activity, the program activities and the program inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes can be tested by a number of questions. You set questions for each of these, and each of these questions needs an answer for you to answer. Like what, for example, you ask, if the changes from the planned activities were made, what changes were made and why were they necessary? So what is this question answering? This question is actually answering one very important topic, which is one very important question, which is related to the activities section of the logical model. So if you follow the logical model, in a way, you will be able to design proper evaluation questions. These are the evaluation questions that you can see. These are just examples. Just take a look at them. Beautiful questions. Like, for example, what were the learners' achievement outcomes? What were the achievement outcomes? And this question, it identifies what the outcomes of, for example, the exam grades are and other additional outcomes that the student might have gained from going through this program. The only problem here is that the context is not really very valued, and this is why the CIPP model comes into play. I love the CIPP model. It's beautiful. It speaks a lot about evaluation of all the logical subsets, but also puts into account a lot of things that have to do with the context and the process. So instead of going through the logical model, we want to ask about the context, the input, the process, and the product. So context, this is the C, I is the input, P is the process, and the other P is the product. And you have to design questions for each of these things. Like, for example, in the context, what pertinent expertise, service, and other assets are available. So now you're actually taking a look at the context of learning, where it happens, what's the situation, what's the reason for the educational process to happen in that way. And then the input, and here are the, for example, this is a question: how feasible is each of the identified approaches given to specific educational context of the need? So I take a look at the approaches, and whether or not they are aligned with the context and with the educational need. This is another question. See how beautiful and deep the questions are becoming? This is why the CIPP model, it gives you more insight into what's behind the education. Of course, questions about the process, how the education happened, lots of questions, and about the product. And here is where we want to identify the outcomes of education and the impact of education under the part called product. So this is called the CIPP model. In my view, it's quite nice, actually. I like it a lot. But what do I recommend? This is what I recommend. I recommend do not complicate things. Don't complicate them. You know your program well. I hate models, but I love logic. So use logic and common sense to ask the perfect questions. What do we want to know? We want to know whether or not change happened. And this is why we have to start by studying the status quo, understanding where we are at the moment, right before we start performing our program evaluation and performing our program itself. Ask yourself the right question. Is it working? Is it working because of what I'm doing? Why is it working? And these are the questions that you have to implement and perform for every aspect of your program. The other thing is, what are the tools that we need to study? Where do we get this information? For example, is it working? I have to ask patients, administration, peers, and workforce. So the beauty of this is for you to start asking yourself where you're going to get this information, and take care. Take care. The more sources you have, the better. So be sure to ask yourself the questions and where you will get these questions. But how will I get the information? This is what we call the tools. Like, for example, focus groups, questionnaire, all that stuff. These are the tools and how I will collect the information. But take care, you have to triangulate. This means that I do not take one piece of information from one source. I need multiple sources for the same piece of information. This is called triangulation. Having done that, I have to understand who will do my program evaluation, who will do the study. These are people who have to be independent, competent, research-oriented. So they are independent, competent, and research-oriented. Now take a look at what we call our evaluation matrix. And this is the beautiful part of program evaluation. So the evaluation matrix is a matrix where we map everything that has to do with the evaluation process. We'll take a look at an example now. If I want to evaluate integration, let's take a look at the evaluation matrix. This is the evaluation matrix. You will see that for every part and every aspect of the program, there are a few things that I need to identify. What are the indicators? What is the evaluation question? What's the indicator? What are the key terms? Identify them. What information is needed? What's the source of data? What's the method for data collection? Who will collect the data collection, and what am I going to do with this information after it is here? So the first goal of, for example, integration is to improve graduate level of competency attainment. That's an example. So how do I evaluate this? What do I put into the evaluation matrix? The first thing, I have to identify the evaluation question. So this is the evaluation question. Is there an improvement of level of competency attainment? So I've now identified the evaluation question. Now set an indicator for this, and an indicator is the perfect answer to your question. What would be the answer to this question that will make you really happy? So for example, for this specific question, the indicator will be there is an increase in the percentage of competencies attained by students by 5%. So you see, it's very quantifiable. What's the source of information? Students, grades, exam analysis. How do I collect them? Well, through document analysis. Who will collect them? Quality assurance unit. How frequent do I collect this data? Well, you collect it once at graduation. So this is a simple example of how to build your evaluation matrix for a specific subset, for a specific evaluation question. See, it's an extensive process. So don't even think you will be able to do it alone. You need a team, a huge team. And be sure to do this with love. Do it with an understanding that we are improving our program and that everything in our system makes an impact and affects learning. Do it with an understanding that we need our students to learn in the best possible context, in the best possible method, and to be happy while they are learning. Thank you so much for being with me today. And I hope this was of use to you. Thank you.